All right, you're all being recorded,
Right.
just so you know. All right, welcome to the Waiting on Hummingbirds book launch. As I said earlier, James and I are releasing our fourth book together now. The first one was Little Fires Hiding, then Everyone's Alone Tonight, and then This Still Life. Now it's time for Waiting on Hummingbirds. Oh, that's somebody. There we go. Okay. Um, when James and I get the chance to read together, usually for events such as this, we each do a solo set, and then we'll do a set together where we read back and forth poems from the books. I'd like to thank Jennifer Brown, since I know she's out there. She wrote one of the blurbs for this. And then, without further ado, I will introduce James, who's going to read first. He is a poet from Kansas City. Currently, he is married and has a couple of kids. His most recent book is called Floating Downstream, which may or may not be blurry. And he also has a split book with Sarah Worrell and Lindsay Bowen Martin. Am I remembering that correctly? Anyway, he'll tell you all about that and more. James Benger, why don't you take it away, good sir?
All right. Thanks, Jason. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate it. I know Jason does as well. Um, it's been a real honor to work on these books with Jason, and it's a real partnership. And I very much enjoy every time we put these books together. And I really appreciate everyone taking part in what we do. Um, I'm going to get right into just reading some poems. Since Jason and I are going to do our back and forth, I'm going to stick for my solo set to some other stuff that's not in our books because I figure I'll hit that stuff later. Um, so, as Jason mentioned, I have a book. It's going to look backwards, but it's called About Those Losses. I did with Sarah Worrell and Lindsay Martin Bowen. Um, Came out a month or two ago with Spartan Press. And I'm going to just read a poem from that. This one's called Lost Division. We would pedal our bikes, trudging the gravel that was mostly dust of Marquette Avenue. Squat boxes and single wides. That one weird kid's parents kept a donkey in the pen out back, and chickens would scatter at a call. That stray dog always following, waiting for someone to drop, waiting for something to drop. There was this weird dude in the tar paper shack on the edge of the woods who never came out but to put empties on the porch and shoo any of us away who were brave enough to snoop. We were looking for anything under those endless sycamores. We knew something had been lost years ago, decades ago. And in the trees and the road, the houses, the families were still trying to figure out what was missing. And we were just young enough to be naive and bold enough to think that we could save the world. If you followed the gravel and dirt long enough, you'd end up on pavement, the subdivision. We always said it in reverent capitals because that's the place where it hadn't been lost. Not all of it, at least not yet. There was patchy grass that was still kind of green, and there were a few honest to God real basketball hoops in driveways, and not the metal rings nailed to trees back our way. We marveled at how a kid might skateboard were they so inclined. We were convinced, or I'm sorry, we convinced that one boy to get his parents to give us the scrap wood in their backyard, and we cobbled a bike ramp in the field just south of the subdivision. And we rode that ramp the whole summer, gravel kids and pavement kids together, and no one laughed when someone bled, and someone's mom always had Kool Aid when it got too hot. And when we pedaled back to our lot of dust and dirt, shutting drafty front doors and closing our eyes, something had been found. So there's that one. Thanks. Um, All right, here's one called M. Um, we met. I'm sorry. Let me start over. This one's called him. Uh, when we met, he was living with his cousin at the end of the hall. I tried to take his side on everything, but he was always so angry. But then again, I suppose that'll happen if your mom shoots herself in the head from the park bench while you're tossing a frisbee. We got drunk a lot and talked about music and movies. He dug goth metal and horror flicks, and I was more into grunge and art house stuff. One night a case of Red Stripe in, he tried to sell me on the artistic merits of Marilyn Manson and Freddy versus Jason, and I equally tried to convince him of that Peach GB album and that Sideways movie. And we did a lot of wobbly agreeing to disagree. And after his cousin got tired of it all, he got a room in a duplex with some dude way older and much more mature than us. Then there was that big party where I passed out on the floor and someone pissed on the rug and someone else broke their arm out on the deck. And that was that. He moved somewhere else. I only saw him once after that. He had shaved his head and met a girl with a shaved head, and he seemed good. All right. Thanks. Um, okay. The most important part. Um, things we do. Dad lived in Antarctica for a while. I always said how boring it was once you got over the beauty of it all. It was just that thing he did that one time. After you hit that point, there wasn't much to do but get drunk and box penguins and screw with seagulls. He'd say you down a bottle of Jack and head to the junkyard. Apparently, there was a junkyard there. And apparently, instead of a guard dog, there was the world's largest, perhaps an exaggeration, emperor penguin. Many a besotted sailor was laid out on the snow by the massive black flipper. There was a movie theater, but the only film they had, and remember, this was the early 70s, was The Sound of Music, which was not the flick of choice for a bunch of drunken, homesick GIs whose families were at home starving and whose friends were over in Vietnam. And the reels made it to the snow and then pissed on more than once. Dad's got a million of these stories. And funny enough, they all take place at a time when he was over a decade younger than I am now. And I wonder if I'll ever have stories so good or if I missed my chance. It occurs to me that maybe my dad never thought of any of these stories as anything other or is anything at all outstanding. So maybe if I ever tell my sons about that time I stowed away on a train in France because I couldn't afford the ticket back to Paris, and when I got there, I didn't have the ticket to get into the airport, and the armed guard chased me, but I lost him only to find out that I'd missed my flight. So I spent my last euro on a call to my boss to say I wasn't going to be in tomorrow. And then I slept under an abandoned check in desk with my jacket as a pillow while I tried to figure out how the hell I was going to get home. Maybe they'll think that's pretty cool, but to me, it's just that thing I did that one time. All right, let's see here. I think I'll do like one more from this book, and then I'll do one thing from one of my others, and then we'll turn it over to Jason. Um, all right. You're probably sensing a theme with these poems. This one's called Jackie. Uh, Jackie lived in the run to hell trailer on the other side of the box wire fence. We rode the bus together. After school, we'd toss my rock solid basketball back and forth over the fence. He never asked me to come over, Said his mom didn't allow people in the house. I always assumed Jackie's mom worked a lot. I almost never saw her. And now I wonder if maybe it had more to do with those big men with the long beards and leather vests that rode the thunderous motorcycles and left empty aluminum cans and broken needles along the street. Once, when I was brushing my teeth for bed, I could hear the big men making lots of noise from the trailer next door, the occasional gunshot. Jackie's mom didn't use the knocker, she just pounded fists on the door. I opened it, white foam still around my grade school mouth. She said she needed to use the phone. The cops came quick, bright flashes in the summer dark. Jackie didn't talk much after that night. A few weeks later, while passing the basketball, I asked if he wanted to trade toys. Jackie held the petrified basketball to his chest and told me, I ain't got no toys. I ain't got nothing. Then his mom called him in, and a week later they were gone. The big loud men took over the trailer for a while until the city had it condemned and hauled off. I wonder if Jackie's still out there, if he remembers me. If so, I want him to know that I thought of him today. All right, cool. Thank you. I think I'm going to do one from this book, Floating Downstream, this tiny little thing. And then I'll turn it over to Jason. Um, this is called What Did We Know? What did we know? We would fly electric, nothing but stars and immortality. Radio promises pushed to distortion and highway truth. Air was easier and faster, and in so much abundance, and nothing mattered. We found secrets and promises and long lost keys. Ours was the nature of nature. Ours was gravel and sky. Ours was always and now. What did we know? All right. Okay.
I am unmuted. Thank you, James. That was awesome. It's always
Thank
good to
you.
hear you read. I think you and I have maybe only gotten the chance to read in person together 5 or 6 times.
Something like that. Hasn't
I
been
think
long
that's
for,
about right.
hasn't been many for as many years as it's been.
It is odd.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to read you some poems now. I'm going to read you a couple new poems, and then I'm going to read you uh, a, a poem from each of the books before I creep into waiting on hummingbirds, and then we'll bring James in. So this first poem is all right. Glasses on, glasses off. Okay, glasses on seems to be the way this is going to go tonight. So this first poem is a poem about Terre Haute, Indiana, uh, your old neighborhood. It's called Champagne Velvet. 200,000 gallons of champagne velvet, a waterfall, a boon that fills tunnels to the Wabash with steam and horses. Men and animals function as machine in an underground maze catacomb, the steam heat of centuries captured out where cow towns meet the Rust Belt. That steak sliced free bleeds across my plate, washed down champagne velvet and classy. The woman behind me, loud as the Peterbilt queen of nowhere, tells her tattooed brother in bibbed overalls that she's finally had enough of her husband. She's finally leaving. And I hear strain and I hear tension, hops and ivory across her voice. And you don't know how long I've waited to hear you say that. Bibbed overalls and potatoes says, and then their conversation dials into hushed tones, static into seedy remains of the prosperity and promise of steam. Faded as the catacombs closed, the Wabash River flows, white limestone and muscle memory. This poem, thank you, James. I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. This poem was just published in Vox Populi yesterday. This is called A People's History of Williamson, West Virginia. We could have gone to the prom with the Coal House girls. Crushed velvet dresses, color drawn richer in humidity. They wait for dreams and corsages to die just like Romeo and Juliet. Instead, we holed up in a burned out department store rechristened junk shop, sifting boxes of 10-cent photos, black and white, watching a people's history of Williamson, West Virginia as a remaindered flipbook. Camera flash illuminates moments head craned to the surface. A new used car sitting in pea gravel under a pawpaw. The sun shining off the canal as she sat neatly on a picnic bench. Smoking uncles, messy rubber-legged toddlers, beehived ants, gaunt Halloween witches, coal black-faced miners carrying lunches in gunny sacks, not one graduation in sight. No one ever actually smiling, only distance read in eyes focused on the ledge of another mountain range. These boxes, never rescued, sepia acid stained or rusted pipe washed, 8 lanes of train tracks that led out of town, now left to oxidize, burnt sienna memories, color faded ghosts, haunt photo paper alone. All right, I need a drink after that. This next poem is called A Postcard from Luke, Maryland. We were honeymooners, weekend lovers dabbling in magic as we started down that deep gorge decline from the top of Backbone Mountain. And maybe you said it out loud or under your breath. Maybe I just heard you thinking it. I love you. The Potomac never visible, only the rock face wall painted 24 or more white crosses, the diesel smoke casualties, the twisted metal unlucky who gave their lives to a mighty highway bend, leaving tire marks, blood stains for the rain to make of as it chooses. Your voice sucked back in, breath caught in your throat as we crossed into West Virginia before turnarounds to Allegheny County. Those crosses roll across your eyes, graphics in a slot game gone awry. We pulled in for a pizza at the Civil War Hospital on the other side of Savage Mountain, silent and still as cannon smoke. All right. Thank you. This is called Close to the Mountain's Breast. We watch crows fly into West Virginia and then back, never realizing they crossed boundary, never realizing they weren't here in a dry-leaved tinderbox, navigating twisted oak, broken hickory, nature remade by water, these old granite mountains still wearing down to pebbles, only then to wash away. And I've seen hillsides gone and rivers forging new beds, islands of debris walking across land, cars overturned in rhododendron, waiting for their secrets to be found. I've seen cities survived and barely alive, fresh bridges of footprint. And if I cut west from the cracked, dry, and washed away, I'll find smoke thick and acrid, sticky across Kentucky valleys, shrouds over tight streets close to the mountain's breast, the smell of campfires choking the windows back up as slow motion flames V through these runs. No breaks in woodbine, autumn reclaimed as carbon and ash, a discordant, surreal, blazed version of turkey in the straw. It's true, there is nothing to see unless you know where to look. My eyes are red and burning, my lungs raspy and raw, swallowing these roads, all their tragedies. I am ancient tonight under bridges, out of the deluge, still remember how I saw these mountains once, how I've seen them ever since. And I know they've seen past and well beyond future. I don't have that vision, but I know, unlike me, unlike now, they were never afraid. All right, let's get into some Baldinger Benger books here. Starting with Little Fires Hiding. Back in 2018, I think it was. This is called At the Blue Haven. All right, now we're at glasses off. Damn it. All right, At the Blue Haven. Sky opens, familiar summer squall, the Blue Haven. Electric neon smothers outside eaves, hisses and hums in the rain, the soundtrack to backseat cocaine. Smog Veil opens on a $5 cover. Outside sign said Glitz this Saturday. Evidently, the Quiet Riot cover is Glitz. The bartender tells me they used to be called 911. The bikers have no idea why we're overdressed. Ian paid the cover for the bride and groom yet to arrive. Seated, exhausted, how many drinks have I had since the industrial hellmouth gave birth to ceremony? I can't remember. I don't care. And drink myself disappointed. Sober. Fingers looped in suspenders, bride and groom arrive, take shots. I nurse workers' tears. Sweet child of mine, half step down, limps without a second guitar. And someone is high school catching up. Someone asks for a tampon. Someone asks about the wedding. We pick the bones of a commemorative box of cookies, debate to even odds at the next song. It's a struggle as it breaks the verse. Shit, I hadn't heard Trickster since 1990. Tonight, our time machine falls off the table. And now moving on to Everyone's Alone Tonight. What did I choose from this book? This, one of my all-time favorite poems. Of mine, of course. A palomino and a bull snake. This is for Lindsay Garcia, who's a Kansas poet. There were 4 water towers on the Salina skyline, more than 10 rooms with private baths in the places that I stayed. I've lived the last couple days on gin and tequila. There's been no need to hit the brakes over the last 80 miles. It feels like I'm barnstorming a prairie fire. The longest train I ever saw was in Amarillo. That was before today, although it may have been Sheridan. Amarillo is 400 miles south. Sheridan is a palomino and a bull snake away. In the distance, there's a storm stuck over Topeka. I've seen so much big sky and empty plains, it makes me want to swing north for the Badlands. I could make Rapid City by morning. Yesterday, I learned that Mexican buffet are the 2 most perfect words in the English language. And as I left, I noticed the only graffiti on the men's room wall: my asshole is burning. Except both the S's were faint. They had been corralled to some Baptist ranch in the sky where profanity is still the devil's tongue. Yesterday, I found I could turn bluebird breadcrumbs into bluebirds. If I head north and gun it through Nebraska, I'm going to try my luck turning motels into buffalo. The bookmark for this is from an IHOP in Salina, Kansas, where the waitress, who must have known we were poets, wrote on my check, "What do authors eat for breakfast?" Synonym buns. So thanks to Maddie from Salina, Kansas for that little joke. Let's move on to This Still Life. This is called When Hope is on Life Support. There was a planet on the playground, big and small holes children pop through, a game of whack-a-mole, the ever-present smell of piss. That planet is gone. No more piss pants, no more brutalist concrete 70s playgrounds. Now people get married here. I've been to a couple, mostly because I know the exact right time to play Purple Rain. Tonight, punk rock babies are taking pictures of their Miata in the shadows of observatories. A 79 Bonneville hangs a left, beeping horns for familiar faces. Time goes out of focus. It's 1983, perhaps, waiting on my father's tan Plymouth Fury to turn around in the cul-de-sac and then wheeze to park. The car was a beast, abandoned to three flat tires, forgotten after his death. My mother finally sold the Fury for a Benjamin in 1986, seed pods falling into the snow as tow trucks took it away. It was a cold day. Off from school, I shoveled snow and drank hot cocoa. The same kind of mid-80s day in the Rust Belt where rockets fall out of the sky and hope is on life support. All right. Gonna do two poems from Waiting on Hummingbirds, and then we'll call James in and we'll go back and forth for a little while. So what do I have marked in here? Let's stick with that sort of concept. This is Cold Water Glistens. We were raw souls, and we didn't know it. Sapling catalpas roam subtropical summer sidewalks, desperate for a breath inside the walls of swelter. And there would be this electric buzz rattling in the air of our childhood bedrooms. Our teeth would chatter simultaneous, and then we would be in the streets in our shorts, our underoos. The local firemen opened the plugs. The water rushed torrents of neighborhood curbs. All the kids were there. Between parked car rapids, some feet in, some ass in, some attempt to swim, some erode into the debris of a city. These little catalpas, inebriated in perfect equation. Cold water glistens meets summer afternoon, a still life, an eternity. See what I did there? I brought in one of the old book titles too, huh? Smart guy sometimes. All right, this will be my last one, and then James, jump on in, and we'll have a little round robin. This is called Across Grayscale Scrub. I've felt the ocean rolling in blood for the last month. The timelessness of tradition grows into a throb until highways dismantle, the rattle of traffic. Chunks of pavement disappear into salt air, into the crash of waves, into the approximate or infinite. With the moonrise, it will all look different. Boardwalk lights fade to constellation. And somehow, 8 years run across the horizon as one moment. Heat lightning brain meets cold air deepening. I still have my prayers, maybe more than ever. Left in the sand, pulled back by the tide. I have a year to dissolve, trusting the time is water soluble. Horseshoe crab shells moored, sand prints across motel carpet, across grayscale scrub. Another sunset in the side view, another sunrise witnessed. Another year piles on graceless, listening to waves break across the highway, through the heartland, along the shore. All right, thanks everybody. I'm just gonna make sure I don't need to let anybody in or anything. So, no, okay, I didn't miss anything while I was out there. All right, James, how you doing?
All right.
Ready?
Man, I'm blown away every time you read. And it was really cool because I don't know if I've heard you read any of these before. I think I've just read them. So that was really pretty
Awesome.
special. Oh man. Um, Whenever Jason reads, I kind of have to take a second to like collect myself.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
uh, okay. I'm gonna do one from our new book, Waiting on Hummingbirds. Um, this is called Bright as the Darkness. On moonshot nights, we ran. Flashlights and shorts, brambles and boots. The goal was to go as deep, as unseen, as completely immersed in forest green isolation, to hear the cicadas and the coyotes duet while autumn leaves were coaxed by the wind to provide a jazz backbeat. Lights out and early dewdrops, Morning spiders crawling, crawling to find a home, closed eyes and communion, total envelopment, breathing the universe. Unused tents pitched over blue plastic tarps, a ring of stones for a fire that would never glow half as bright as the darkness on the moon on a starless night.
I'm still looking for the poem.
Sorry, I was trying to buy some time.
Oh no, you're all right. I know what I'm trying to read. I just can't seem to find it quickly for whatever reason. There it is. It's right on page 4 where I went right past it. To live as the moon. This is from Waiting on Hummingbirds. Those shifts were interminable. Pallet Jack drags tons across industrial tile floors, a wasteland of consumable goods, halogen glare, and the hell of 4 a.m. From November till April, there was no such thing as daylight. Driving east into sunrise before a couple Miller Genuines and an episode of Chips, to live as the moon, seasonal depression as a shadow. Summers were death. Playgrounds outside buzz, lawnmowers of regular hours, full hot breath of humidity resting on your chest as deep sleep should settle, wake in sweat with afternoon bright. The only pleasure found in ice cold water, head in full swell of open tap, brief indulgence before stillness, evaporate back to sleep. Always another shift waiting.
Okay. Getting on. She has a whole lot of trouble admitting that any of this is of any reasonable consequence. There's blood on the floor, and she's not sure how long it's been there, or even whose it is. Though she's the only one who's ever been here, so. Cars hiss by her window just like in that old song, but nothing about this is sweet and bluesy, though the crippling longing has a place in all of this for sure. She walked down the hall a few days ago, slid the rent check under a door, sounds of soap opera blaring from an antiquated TV on the other side of the cheap hollow wood, and the trip seems like enough to count as social interaction for at least the rest of the week. She's having trouble finding a reason to look for a reason. And all the while, that maroon crust not far from her bare mattress calls to her. Some reminder that all of this does have some consequence. She tosses a soiled shirt over the stain and gets on with the business of getting on.
Nice. Thanks, James. Waiting on Hummingbirds will stay there. This is the last vestige of Tiki. Carla limes, then salts Corona bottlenecks. Professional bartender gauntlet. She's been at this for centuries. I count the hay seeds, think about nicotine time stamped into the grass skirts that may be the last vestige of Tiki left in this motel lounge. She left this town for Philly as soon as she grew wings, bounced around Holiday Inns with private dancer, a soundtrack, acquired all the merit badges service time affords. She's been rubies and diamonds. She's been gold club. But a city wears on a heart, and the service industry takes what it will. So she left it and a no good man to come back home, bought in on unincorporated land, dark skies, and nowhere far enough from the ghosts of her memories. She keeps company with a man from another small town, somewhere dusty like Oklahoma, where they only drink tomato juice and Budweiser. Tonight it's everyone's birthday, off kilter and out of key, sounding like an AM radio commercial for the Rural King. I cash out after I hit my limit. Tip amounts to the check. Carla and I wish each other good luck. I'll sleep deeply tonight, wrapped in red, and wildflower smoke.
Damn, man.
Thanks, man.
It's it's a hard job following you. Just saying. Just throwing that out there. Uh
You're awesome, babe. Just keep rolling.
all right. Um incremental. Follow the road into the negative spaces where the light turns itself, refracting into black as the miasma of our sluggish existence peters its way to a slow crawl. Dewdrops on rusted rails the shed bark of a fir tree, an old horseshoe and cowbell buried in a century of forgotten moments. There is a wall that separates all of this, claims it for its own, a universe under the paper. As we peer, the bugs crawl, and all the cogs turn brilliantly clockwork, but one cannot polish a rock without some important tumbling. The courts of us finds itself more useless when in meaningless pieces, but anything can pave a road, even the ones that lead out.
Right. The Bay City Blues. Sticking with waiting on hummingbirds. Bay City, I was never so frail. Overlooking that Huron ocean, summer black flies swell the debris of highways down past Grand Funk and Flint, down river to Detroit. And I don't know when the end was. A steady erosion in the waves, this windblown sun taking that manifest birthright. I mean, it had to be California. It's always California. Bass unsettles the San Andreas, frogs in the mouth of Angel Camp sunsets. Or in a dimly lit pizzeria, 70s red plastic that hang on Wairika nowhere, waiting on hummingbirds. I left it all out there somewhere. An iron range of miles mined, a boulder scatter, still covered, waiting for the melt that feeds those big rivers, waiting on the edge of yonder until all that's left is the paper lungs of ghost, awestruck in loneliness under a pink Champlain sky. And it's Bay City again. Another decade stretched till it broke. A downtown naked of visitors on this Marlowe Noir Sunday. I may not be human. As the Huron Ocean stretches all early spring breathless, another second to lose it all. If you seek Pleasant Peninsula, look about you.
Okay. All right. Driveway gravel. This is slightly more, kind of maybe more lighthearted, I guess. I don't know.
We're not lighthearted. Let's
Yeah,
not.
we don't do like for us at least. Yeah, it's. I guess that's a low bar. Uh, driveway gravel. We would ride like hell in Mom's '77 Diplomat. Me behind the wheel, we'd pretend we were the Duke boys as we jumped imaginary gullies, hood ornament glinting in the white July sun. Mom would yell at us from the kitchen window as we wriggled out the windows instead of using doors. The glass didn't go all the way down. She was sure we'd end up cut and sorry. And sometimes when she was away at the factory, whatever factory the temp agency sent her to, and dad was inside doing his best to sleep off a 12-hour night shift, I'd throw the wagon into neutral, let her inch back to the dusty line where the gravel driveway met the hard packed dirt of Marquette Avenue. Windows down, the crunch of those white rocks under the bald retreads told me freedom was on the other side of childhood.
Going to Everyone's Alone Tonight, our second book, Beckmeyer, Illinois, 1958. This is for the Kansas poet Roy Beckmeyer. We usually headed to Shoal Creek. Once I got older, sometimes it was Carlisle Lake. We'd find a dark alcove, toss our lines out from shore. Sometimes we'd use a boat, listen while the bow cut the water. My father would tell us again how it was working in the mines, about everybody's brother or uncle gone, about the cave-ins, the explosions, about how they lost a hand or a leg. Maybe if they were lucky, it was only a finger. If they weren't, maybe it was their lives. As I got older, I took this as a reminder to get the hell out of town and not let the mines take me down. I listened. He would tell me again about our grandfather, a machine runner, how he was running an air puncher when a ton of slate came down on him, how it shattered his back. They dug him out and took him to St. Louis, but it was too late. He was already gone. And no matter how many times he told that story, the hair on my neck always stood up. The helmets we used on these nights were taken out of the mines. And I wondered then if the light that shone above me was the last light my grandfather had seen.
Man, jeez, hitting me with all the heavy stuff.
Sorry. I've really
No, it's
enjoyed reading
good.
these books this week.
Yeah, it's good. It's good, man. It's I have to recover every time. That's a
You
good
know,
thing.
I'll get the Van Halen poem up next. How about
Uh,
that?
all right. I'm gonna go to This Still Life, I think. I'm gonna jump back to that one. The ritual. He would get up early of a weekday morning, take himself out to the back of his 3 acres, the last bit wooded, sit himself in an aluminum armchair, sight down the crooked barrel, and shoot. He claimed for the deer he never seemed to bag, the deer no one else ever saw. But I'm still not convinced he wasn't shooting at God, or his past, or his future, trying to paint the morning in buckshot, trying to blast back to start. He would talk about the rails and the summer sun, about horses and barbed wire and shovels. He never touched on the uncertainty floating just under the surface of his eyes. He never talked about the flowering dread of a world that withdrew itself seemingly more rapidly every day. When the wet would come, his cane would tell you all you needed to know. Shoving wood into the stove, unused prohibition stills in the basement, each year covering the memories, the stories in another coat of regret. After he was in the ground, I went out back and fired a rifle into the trees, but it didn't help.
I love that poem, James.
Thanks.
As promised, I'll try and lighten the mood. Civic Arena, March 7th, 1984. Snow on the dash. Snow crunches under the tires of a 77 Rabbit, her friend's boyfriend with a handful of pills to share. She plastered a pint in her jeans. Security never looked anyway. Into the dark of the floor, fog machine smells the fills, slow things down, speed things up, blur things together as Diamond Dave glitter and fuzz from this far away. Running with the devil into eruption, and she never cared for those long solos but whiskey and counting 23 times for the word jump. It's infinity. What's infinity? Drunk enough on her boyfriend's shoulders, arms up gigantic as they tore into ink talking about love. Last song, and it's everything. Freedom is a ghost waiting to go numb. The post office ain't the same. There ain't nothing wild left of what remains.
Damn, man.
I tried.
No, you did it. You did it. It was even your slightly less dark ones, I mean, they still hit hard. So that's a good thing. That's the best thing. I like that when you're reading a book and you like as you're going along and you have to stop and just put it down for a minute and just like catch your breath.
Walk away for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and just really, really absorb what you just took in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on that note, I'm going to do something completely different. Uh, this one's also from The Still Life. I haven't done this one in a while, but I like it. It's called Disrepair. He threw a wrench today, right across the workshop, where it took out any number of various items from the pegboard. The red rage glowed as tools clanged to the concrete. He did everything right. Everything, god damn it. But here he is, late at night, doing his best to Frankenstein back to life a cobbled vacuum cleaner because who could afford anything new now? It was all right. It was all good until it wasn't. And he's not sure when the shift happened, but it did. And now he knows he's in too deep. He thinks of the walnuts on Grandpa's farm and how clean and pure they tasted, how precise, how delicate the procedure of removing flesh from shell, how it never rained, or if it did, it wouldn't last. This dream was a lie. It might have been true for someone, somewhere, sometime, but not now, not for him, maybe not ever, probably not ever. He goes over to the pegboard and methodically picks up his mess, carefully replacing each item, because that's the best he can do.
All right. I'm going to go to Little Fires Hiding uh, and read you the first poem from that, which is Winter 1979. This is a Steve Pellegrino story, and Steve was, or is, please don't make Steve a was, a boss of mine, a good friend. We did a lot of drywall work together over the years. All right, Winter 1979. Corner of Bethoven and Apollo. Hanging drywall in a warehouse, no running water, piss in a bucket, scan the east side of the city. Shake drywall dust out of my hair. The sun in this city is the strange case of Jekyll and Hyde. When it's gray with a brutal winter light, it could still be hell with the lid off. When it's sunshine, especially in the spring, especially in the fall, I swear it's the goddamn Garden of Eden. Today, as I look at the Immaculate Heart of Mary, it's both, sometimes at the same time. Pellegrino used to live down the street, late 70s. He's got his stories out, and I can't keep the dates straight. So let's say it's winter 1979, when he climbed that Douglas fir on the hillside drunk and cut 12 feet off the tree so his wife could have the Christmas she wanted. He tells me about Chessie, a Polish drunk a few hairs over 5 feet who stuttered and played the accordion. He fired howitzers during the Great War, and his brain never recovered. His sister was in an institution, and after his parents died, he couldn't afford it. So he moved her in with him and lived off her social security checks. She died near the end of the month, and he didn't call the cops. He didn't call the coroner. He waited days till her next check came, bought a ton of beer, drank himself silly, and then called the coroner, who couldn't tell when she died. Her skin was wax. Her ears were black. They covered her in a sheet and then took her away. All the while, Chessie rambled that he swore he fed her breakfast that morning. Chessie claimed he married Spanish Anne, who no one ever saw. When he mentioned her, he'd wheeze in a nasal voice. Blue Spanish eyes, tears falling from your blue Spanish eyes. It was nothing like Humperdinck. Alcohol got the better of Chessie. He lost the house, taxes, and loans. No more Iron City pounders. He died alone in one of those goddamn government rest homes.
Man,
Should we
I
do
love when
like,
you do that poem. Like that.
yeah, I haven't read that poem in a long time.
Yeah, that's all right.
Should we do like
I'll do it.
two more from Hummingbirds, and then maybe I'll read the broadside and we can cash out of
Sounds
here?
sounds good. Sounds good. Two more from Hummingbirds. Let's see.
We also have to remind people that your Bandcamp is set up to take orders for this. Mine hopefully will be set up in the next day or so. Uh,
Okay.
so we can either put that in the chat or something at some
Yeah,
point.
I'll do that in a minute.
Awesome.
Let's see. What do I want to do from this is a lot of these I've never done before, so now I'm like second guessing myself a lot. Uh, you know what? I'll do Dust. I'll do Dust. It's another poem about she or her or whatever. This character who is loosely based on several people. Dust. She pretended for a time when all of this monotony didn't seem so preordained. She tries to fool herself into believing that there was once a moment when, although nothing was right, there was a wistful hope of regaining her perpetual shaky equilibrium. There's a thick layer of dust on top of the TV and exponentially more on the windowsill. Nothing is clean anymore. Everything's so far gone, any kind of restoration feels like the sickest of jokes. Hope feels like a cruel barb, something to bleed her out as the entire world rolls their eyes and laughs. Because to them, she's not real. And to herself, she wonders if she ever was.
All right. From Waiting on Hummingbirds, a Howard Johnson prayer. Nothing has a right being this beautiful. In the mighty exhale of crossing the heartland again, the chill that saturates post Labor Day, the sun already a victim, but there are no stars in this fenced pool parking lot watering hole with logos looming and billboards crowing and traffic blowing past headlights through honeycomb and the interstate close enough to hear it whinny at the horizon. Another outlaw moment. Flat Earth and floodplain, 250 miles, 25 milligrams, waiting on the corn stalks to colonize these temples. Cold blue water steals as it reinforces this essence. And I float on dreams that stretch middle Mississippi to Machu Picchu. I float a black and white dream. Memories of a dark sky, meditation. So if you
Okay.
buy the book from either of us, there is a broadside that comes with it. Photo that I took from Matewan, West Virginia. There you go. And a poem by James. This is sort of a harbinger of a future project that maybe we'll tell you about somewhere along the line. But in the interim, you just get this broadside. Again, only if you get it through us. I believe any purchase of any of our books will get it to you. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and just read the damn poem, which is called Look Out for the Locomotive. This is James's poem, as I said. And this is an encore, not that you asked for one. A sigh as pointless as this life. He thinks, approaching the tracks, tattered pack on back, beer can empty of liquid, but full of butts in one hand, a fresh but not cold one in the other. His hands don't tremble as much as they have lately, but then they rarely do this time of evening, after the scorching sun has taken her thumb off the backs of those not blessed with air conditioning. He walks to the center of the tracks, right in front of the sign, and sits down on the decaying ties, plops his aluminum ashtray in gravel, and takes a long swig of the cheapest beer on the bottom shelf. Life ain't always so bad, he thinks, lying down between the rusted rails. There's always been something magic about passing the time this way. It's not only the potential for danger, but it is that too. He lights a fresh one, takes a long drag, rests his head in his hands, and thinks of anything. Right. Thanks to everyone who came to the Waiting on Hummingbirds book release party launch here. James is going to get this up on the YouTube and whatnot so other people can see it if they couldn't be here. So you can keep that in mind. James put his Bandcamp up, so you can definitely get a copy of the book from him. Mine will be up in a day or so. I'm a little slow. Maybe I'll do it tonight. Who knows? But my Bandcamp is it looks like his, except it's my name.
You should put your link in there too, like for your Bandcamp, even if that book's
Yeah,
not on
but
there.
if
There's
I
other
can
stuff
figure
on
that
there.
out, I'm bad with these
Uh,
newfangled devices, but I'll do my
yeah,
best.
those interwebs.
Yes, interwebs are confusing to me. I'm an analog creature.
Thank
Uh,
you, Carl. I just saw your note.
yeah. Um, cool. Well, yeah, I guess we'll all just roll on out of here then. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, James. I'm
Yeah.
really happy with this book. I'm really happy with the previous books. Um, yeah, let's talk soon, man.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I really appreciate it. Um, I appreciate the blurbs that were on back. Thank you.
Forgot to
Um,
thank John Burroughs and Karen
yeah,
Schubert for those as well as Jen Pratt.
right. And every time we do these books, it's a thrill, and I'm very proud of this one. I say this every time. I tell Jason this all the time, and I say this every time when we're working on it. It's like this is our best one yet, and I know I repeat myself every time, but I really believe it, and that's not to denigrate the other books because they're very, in my opinion, and I'm a little biased. They're very strong too, and I really appreciate everyone taking the time to hear us share our poems.
Yeah, I can't add anything more to that. All right. Well, thank you for everyone who participated, and yeah, I'll post links up, etc., as they come about. And yeah, thank you, everyone. With that, good night, Zoom. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.